First, I would like to thank all those who have encouraged me to continue with these readings. I've always thought that the first part of the journey to Ixtlan taught lessons that everyone should know, regardless of the culture into which they were born. "Would you teach me about peyote?" I asked. He did not answer, and simply looked at me as if I was crazy. We went into the chaparral. He mentioned repeatedly that I had to be aware of the uselessness of my self-importance and personal history. "Your friends," he said, turning to me abruptly, "those you have known a long time, you must leave them quickly." Can I just add here that I do not think Don Juan meant it that literally. I think he was saying that Carlos had to abandon the conventional way of looking at the world with which he'd been brought up. He began humming a Mexican folk tune, and then lifted his head abruptly and looked at me. His eyes were fierce and burning. I wanted to look away or close my eyes, but to my utter amazement I couldn't break away from his gaze. He asked me to tell him what I had seen in his eyes. I said I saw nothing, but he insisted that I voiced what his eyes had made me aware of. He asked me if he reminded me of a bird. "A bird?" I exclaimed. He giggled like a child and moved his eyes away from me. "Yes," he said softly, "a very funny bird." He locked his gaze on me again and commanded me to remember. He said with an extraordinary conviction that he knew that I had seen that look before. His eyes were extraordinarily fierce. There was a feeling about them that reminded me of something. I pondered for a moment, and then I had a sudden realization. His gaze reminded me of the look in the eyes of a falcon. I used to hunt them when I was a boy, and in the opinion of my grandfather, I was good. He had a chicken farm, and falcons were a menace. I had forgotten that the fierceness of their eyes had haunted me for years. "I used to hunt falcons," I said. "I know," Don Juan said matter-of-factly. He asked me to look at him again and tell him about the very funny bird he reminded me of. I struggled against him, and out of contempt said there was nothing to talk about. Instead of answering me, he commented on my behaviour and told me I was a violent fellow capable of frothing at the mouth at the drop of a hat. He insisted I look into his eyes and tell him about the strange falcon. He submitted very funny bird with strange falcon. I suddenly became sad. I've hunted so many birds that I can't recall anything about them. "This bird is special," he replied in almost a whisper. A stupendous recollection came to me. My grandfather discovered that it was a big white falcon that was flying away with his chickens. We started a campaign against the albino falcon, but although I got to know its habits, I only once came close to shooting it. I'd been chasing it all day, and lay down under a tree to rest. The sudden cry of a falcon woke me. I opened my eyes without moving and saw it perched in the top of the tree. There was a sudden gust of wind, and I used it to muffle the noise of lifting my rifle. I wanted to wait until the bird had turned or begun to fly so I would not miss it. But the bird remained motionless. In order to get a better shot, I would have had to move, and the falcon was too fast. I thought it best to wait. And I did, a long, interminable time. Perhaps what affected me was the long wait, or perhaps the loneliness of the spot. Suddenly I felt a chill up my spine, and in unprecedented action, stood up and left. I did not even look to see if the bird had flown away. It was terribly strange that I did not shoot it. He said that a white bird like that was an omen, and that not shooting it was the only right thing to do. "Your death gave you a little warning," he said in a mysterious tone. "It always comes as a chill." I did not see him leaning over me until he actually whispered something into my ear. He told me to turn round casually and look at a boulder to my left. He said my death was there staring at me, and if I turned when he signalled, I might be capable of seeing it. He signalled with his eyes, and I thought I saw a flickering movement over the boulder. A chill ran through my body. I explained it as an optical illusion caused by turning my head so abruptly. "Death is our eternal companion," Don Juan said, with a mysterious air. "It is always to our left, at an arm's length. It has always been watching you. It always will until the day it taps you." He extended his arm and touched me lightly on the shoulder, and at the same time made a clicking noise with his tongue. The effect was devastating. I was almost sick. How can anyone feel important when we know that our death is stalking us? The thing to do when you're impatient is to turn to your left and ask advice from your death. An immense amount of pettiness is dropped if you remember that your death is always watching you. Death is the only wise advisor that we have. Whenever you feel that everything is going wrong, turn to your death and ask if that is so. Your death will tell you that nothing really matters outside its touch. Your death will tell you, "I haven't touched you yet." Most of us never consciously think about death, yet we are subconsciously aware of it all the time. It helps us determine whether any activity we plan is safe or dangerous. It is an awareness of death that makes us careful about new ventures. Death is indeed an advisor. It is also salutary to read of the sudden unexpected death, perhaps from a motorbike accident, and realize that anyone can be here today and gone tomorrow.